G'day folks, Chris Nitzo, just setting up our YouTube stream, so give me a second, I'll be with you shortly. We all know what we're talking about today, I hope. Yeah, that looks like it's set. All right. I think one of my mods must be on there saying you who. Hey Dan, hey Star, hey Brendan, how are yous? Tennyson, how you going, mate? We have a fair bit to talk about tonight. We'll just got to wait till a few people come online, and then we'll get going. I just want to have a look at the. Yeah, just want to make sure this YouTube stream's up and going. We've had some issues with our YouTube stream. Right, while people are just setting up and just starting to come in, we often find that we sort of get a few people in after about 5 minutes or so. So for the first couple of minutes, I just want to mention, by the way, g'day folks, my name's Chris Nitzo. I'm from Weather IQ, lead forecaster at Weather IQ. Yeah, we've got quite an interesting system to talk about tonight. A monsoon low that may adopt some tropical cyclone characteristics on approach to the coast around that Ingham, Townsville area at the moment appears to be the most likely solution, but there's a few variations to that. Now, folks, just be aware with these live updates, if this is your first time that you're with us, I go through and I explain what's going on. I'll then talk about specific regions. So I'll look at the Cairns district, I'll look at the Townsville district, and I'll look at the Mackay district and tell you what we can expect in those areas and when. And then if I haven't answered questions, then ask your question. A lot of the questions you might have, like what's going to happen in Prossie or what's going to happen in Townsville, we will talk about in the part where I'm spieling. So if I don't, and if you don't hear anything about your area, absolutely ask me a question. But if I've already talked about it, I'll just refer you to go back to the live stream where I did talk about it. Okay, so we're kicking off just quickly while people are coming in. There's another severe weather warning that's sort of gone unnoticed, been issued for the Northwestern Cape and for the Torres Strait up there, right? So that's for the same type of situation that we've got down south in Townsville and that area, but it's for another little low that's up here, and it's creating, or it's enhancing, the monsoonal squalls coming into the Torres Strait. So if we just take a quick squiz at this, we won't spend long on it because obviously we all want to know about the Queensland one, but the North Queensland one. But it is important that we do mention it because otherwise it goes unmentioned, and these poor folks don't get a look in, and they're getting some pretty serious weather. Now, one of the things you'll notice here are the wind gusts in this region. You can see we're getting up around 25 to 35 knots at the moment tonight, and then tomorrow we're anticipating, as we go through tomorrow night, we're actually anticipating 40 to 50 knot winds through the Torres Strait and the Northern Cape. So that's almost as strong, if not as strong, as the stuff we're going to experience in Townsville. It's just not going to affect as many people up here in the tip. So it is important, I think, that we do talk about it just briefly. And you do see the reason. The monsoon trough is moving north. There's a weak circulation along that trough, and it comes onto the coast around Weipa, and therefore that's what's providing that impetus and that strengthening of the monsoon through the Torres Strait. So this is a pretty serious setup there for them. This is about as strong as monsoons can ever get. And so they're really copping it over the course of the next few days up there as well. So spare a thought for those folks. Unlike us down south, they don't have the resources and things at the ready to sort of deal with 3 days of 50 knot winds, right? So pretty serious stuff up there. So hopefully everyone is safe and everyone's ready for that. Total accumulated precipitation just in the next couple of days. We're probably looking at stuff around the. I'll just get rid of our warning overlay. We're probably looking at 200 plus millimeters through the Torres Strait. And remember, they don't have big mountain ranges up there, so it's all fairly flat land. So that's a pretty solid amount of rain coming up for them in the next couple of days. So I just thought we'd start with that because otherwise people wouldn't even know that that's happening. So just be aware, whatever's happening down south to us is also happening up north to them. All right. Folks, before we kick off, big shout out to our major sponsor, top left of your screen there. It's Fair Dinkum Builds, Townsville. Thank you for their support, otherwise we'd be struggling. And also, thank you for your support for those of you that are subscribed. We've got a subscription service at weatheriq.com.au/subscribe on the top right of your screen if you want to get forecasts every single day. Now, I've got a bone to pick with the bomb. That's the first thing we're going to start with. And this is a serious one, right? This is bullshit and it shouldn't happen. For an organisation that's so well funded, such incompetence often happens. Here's what I'm talking about. We're going to go to Townsville. This is bloody incompetent. There's nothing else about it. Right, this is the forecast track of the cyclone. This here. Not the one that's got it coming over the top of Townsville. This is the correct track of the cyclone. This is what the silly bastards put out for you guys. Watch this. Watch how incompetent this is. So they've put the cyclone coming straight over the top of Townsville, the silly bastards. That's not what's going on. The actual track with all of the raw data points goes through Ingham. How? Anyone from the BOM, anyone from the council, how can you trust these people as your single point of truth when they stuff up something so basic, so freaking elementary like that? I mean, honestly, if you are a council right now in this area, Hinchinbrook, Townsville, Burdekin, you are ringing this mob and saying, how incompetent are you people? How can a whole organisation of meteorologists checking, double checking, triple checking their shit, stuff that up? The first track map, the one that everyone remembers from the start. You stuff that up, you put people's lives in danger. For fuck's sake, get your shit together, BOM. This is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Just because we don't live in a capital city, you think we're just a freaking bunch of jokers. Fix your shit. Get your shit right. People rely on your shit to be right. We rely on your shit to be right, so we pass it on to people. You can't do a simple fucking track map. Unbelievable. Right, now I'm going to calm down. I'm going to let the pre-workout go. After that rant, now we're going to talk about the actual system and where it should go. Not this stupid map that they've released to you guys, which is completely incorrect. All right. By the way, weatheriq.com.au/subscribe, you would have had all these forecasts without the rant. You would have had all these forecasts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think there was 8 or 9 of them today. So make sure it's $32.95 a year, folks. It's not much. It's not going to break your bank. But if you can't afford it, that's what I'm here for today, to help you out, and so I don't want you missing out. All right, so our tropical cyclone track is expected to, at the moment, is expected to go through the Ingham Rolling Stone area. So what happens there is Townsville's on the eastern side. All right, so Townsville being on the eastern side is a situation where they tend to be on that stronger side of the circulation. But we will get to what Townsville can expect later on down the track. Let's have a look at the system first. And let's get this. Let's make some sense out of what's going on first. All right. So starting here, we can see that there's a circulation located. They've pretty much got that right. At least they've done one thing right. All right. They've got the circulation fairly well close to spot on. Now that circulation is going to move to the west overnight tonight, and I won't go into the nitty-gritty details about why that is because we've got so much other stuff to discuss, so I'm not going to talk about the dynamics of the steering pattern, but generally speaking, the system will move west until at some stage tomorrow. Now, that some stage is pretty important because if it moves west until, say, tomorrow night, it might be out here by the time it starts to move south. All right. If it's out here and it didn't move much and then tomorrow morning it starts moving southwest, then we're talking about a crossing sort of further east of Townsville. So right now, that crossing point around Ingham seems to be around about the mid-range solution of all of our computer models. All right. You can see, though, that there is an error margin, and the error margin is for a reason. All right. As we continue, what we're expecting to see from this system is that it's going to move in a general westerly direction, as I've mentioned. As we get to tomorrow, now you can see because the system's quite broad, see how it's broad up there? Oh, you just probably can't. I'll just see if we can move us up a little bit because it's a little bit too high for you guys to see. Let's get up here. All right, so you should be able to see that on the top of your screen there, right? So that's our circulation, and it's right on that western edge potentially of the error margin. But the big thing to understand is that it's not a very tight circulation. So that centre could be as far east as here or as far west as there because of the... sorry, I'm just getting a few notifications here. I just want to make sure that they're off. I'm assuming my phone is running hot because I've just stuck it to the bomb because that was just incompetent. All right, so as we go through, we can see here that the system is going to track in a general southerly direction. Now, this is a more western outlier. So this is the European model, and it's got a system coming onto the coast around Cairns. Understand, this is a western outlying model. All right, so most of the model guidance is telling us this will be further east. But it is important model because it is a very good model at tropical cyclone forecast. Now, the big thing to understand is that as it comes onto the coastline that far to the north, if it comes onto the coastline, you'll see what I think is going to happen a little bit later on down the track. But I've got to show you what the data shows so I can then explain why I think what I think. So the system tracking in that far western envelope of the track forecast, right, comes onto the coast around Cairns, but the area of significant rainfall, the area of significant winds is well south of the circulation. So you can see here our significant winds are down around the Townsville district in offshore areas off the Cairns area as well. So our significant winds aren't really around the circulation centre. Now, this is something we've been talking about. You know that this is something we've been talking about for a long time now, at least the last 5-6 days. So the idea of the wind field not really contracting. Now, there is a solution to that if the cyclone moves closer to Townsville because it's going to be over water a little bit longer. If it's going to be over water a little bit longer, we can see that the environment between Cooktown and Townsville for a tropical cyclone to intensify is really good. It's a good environment. So it means that it's it's highly likely if the system can put itself together a little more that it can potentially make it to a marginal tropical cyclone or at least bring that wind field in a touch. But if it hits that far to the north around Cairns, Cairns has nothing to worry about in this situation. Do you understand? So the centre of circulation by the time it hits Cairns is not going to be powerful enough to give any major weather. Your weather in Cairns is going to come in this first bit. So this part here where the cyclone's tracking west, this is why you're getting a fair bit of rain. This is why you're getting all this wind. So you can see a fair bit of shower activity, lots of rain up north up towards the Daintree and Cooktown. And we can see there this southeasterly flow, very, very strong. And the idea here is that this part of the coastline is going to witness their biggest and strongest effects on the leading edge, all right, well before the cyclone's anywhere near them. Once the cyclone moves south of them, I'm just calling it cyclone, you know what I mean. We're talking about the low, right? So once the low/cyclone moves south of them, things are going to settle down big time for their weather pattern, all right? So that's the expectation for the Cairns district. So the severe weather warning that's there at the moment, very much warranted because of the strength of the winds and the strength of and the possible heavy rainfall for tonight and probably even for a large chunk of tomorrow before all of that area will extend southwards or at least contract southwards. All right, so that's the expectation for Cairns. So if we take a look here at, I guess, I don't want to use the euro too much here because I do think it's a bit of a western outlier, but I also understand that it's our best tropical cyclone physics-based model. All right, so the expectation would be, and we're going to zoom into Cairns here so we can have a closer look. Right, the Cairns district and the Atherton Tablelands, the Cape Trib, Daintree area, and the Innisfail Tully region. So what we can see here is that most of our strong winds that sustained at about 30 knots are coming through this Cairns district over the course of the next 24 hours. All right. Once the low gets closer to them, you'll notice that their winds start to decrease. So see how the low gets closer, but the winds get lighter. In a tropical cyclone, the opposite usually happens, right? as the centre of the low gets closer, as the centre of the cyclone gets closer, the winds accelerate in towards the centre. In this situation, because the system's so loose, we get a situation where we don't accelerate that airflow into the centre of circulation. All right, so as we go through, we can see that the end result is going to be a fairly weak low that comes onto the coast. Now, I think this is definitely on the weaker and probably not going to happen end of the spectrum, but it is important I show it to you because it is our number one model. So here's what I think will probably take place through this region. And I think the AI modelling might be our best guide here. So we see once again that the system is tracking in that westerly direction. Then we see a fairly fast southward jut here from about Friday afternoon, Friday night. So we start moving in a bit more of a southwest direction Friday. So keep an eye on the times down here. I hope you can see that. That's our times that we're talking about. So some people were asking the other day about, Nitzo, what times are you talking and days? So down here tells you the time and day, all right, that we're talking about. All right, so as we can see there, Friday night, the system begins drifting towards the southwest. Saturday morning continues to drift towards the southwest. And then on Saturday, begins to drift more in a southerly direction. All right, so you can see here drifting in a southerly direction from there. All right, and we talked in the subscriber service about why that's the case. That's a little bit outside of the scope of what I want to talk about tonight. But the idea is that as the system tracks further south, this environment over the course of the weekend is going to be very conducive to intensification. The cyclone still has to do its part, though, to take advantage of that, and its part has to be to try and develop deep convection. The problem the cyclone's got, which is a good problem for all of us, is that there's so much weather going on around it out here in the monsoonal flow that it's going to struggle to centralise that convection or centralise the storms around the middle of it. All right, so that's why we see such a nice environment for the cyclone to develop in, but there's no sign of any really strong convection through the centre of it. As we get closer to Townsville, we can see the system coming onto the coast where the bomb really have it coming onto the coast, not where the bomb sent that stupid track map to you guys out. Where they've got it, where it's crossing the coast is Ingham. All right, so that Ingham area at the moment appears to be the region. But as I said, our number one numerical weather prediction model shows Cairns, right? So we've got to understand that there is variability still. And the reason it's so variable is because the system is so large in scale. It's such a large rotational field. So just because we can't really pinpoint the centre, or the models are struggling to pinpoint the centre, I should say, that's why we see the variations. And the important thing is to understand what I just mentioned. If it hits Cairns, you haven't got too much to worry about from the cyclone itself. You've got to worry about the southeasterlies just tonight and tomorrow ahead of it. So if it starts to go down towards Townsville, that's a different issue. They do have something to worry about down there if the system tracks in this sort of direction where it comes into that Tully, Ingham, Townsville area. All right? We'll go into that shortly. So from a rainfall perspective, folks, what are we expecting here? Well, it comes. We'll go back to Cairns and we'll have another look at the a little bit closer at the area. So from a rainfall perspective, heavy rain today across that Daintree region and through the North Tropical Coast. And then as we continue, we can see shower activity through the Kasserine Coast and the Daintree coastline overnight tonight into early tomorrow. Early tomorrow, we're getting heavy rainfall activity through the through the Kasserine Coast, and we're getting quite a few showers through the Daintree. To the north of Cooktown, we're actually expecting to see some fairly heavy rain out to sea, out towards Lizard Island. There does look to be a very interesting sort of convergence between the monsoonal northwesterlies and these southerlies coming up the Cairns coastline, and they look like they're going to squeeze together, but no one lives up there, so we can't waste time talking about that peripheral area unless someone wants to. But understand that that's pretty spectacular what's going on up there. But once again, that's another thing that the cyclone has to compete with, right? So this cyclone has to compete with all this rain around, all the big convection further east, this convergence zone further west. It has to compete with a little low up around Weipa. It's got to compete with that big monsoonal flow around the Torres Strait. It's got all these other things going on around it that it can't be the main centre of attention. Cyclones, they're attention whores, they're attention seekers. They need to be the main source of attention. And in this situation, our cyclone is having to share that attention with all these things around it. And that's a problem for it. So as we continue, we can see further heavy rainfall into Friday afternoon, Friday evening. So these numbers here around the northeast coastline tomorrow, they're going to be pretty good. They're going to be pretty big. All right. As we go into Friday night, Saturday morning, we can see this is when our cyclone starts to move southwards. All right. So it's still up here around Cairns to Cape Trib at the moment, east of there. So we're then pulling that system southwards. We're really squeezing the airflow here around Innisfail now. So we're getting big rain, big accumulations down here on the not the Daintree again. I've got the Daintree on my mind. I want to go whitewater rafting at the Mossman River. The area here, the Cassowary Coast. So that's the area of our heaviest rainfall. Now, as the system moves southwards, what we're going to start to see is this area of strong thunderstorm activity. As this southerly contracts southwards, then this northerly and northwesterly comes through offshore, creates some big convergence, mostly offshore. But there is potential for heavy rainfall as the system tracks southwards. But you can see here, we're out to Saturday night at the moment, or Saturday afternoon, Saturday night. The system's here, that southwesterly and westerly coming together in this area around Cooktown, Cape Trib. Could be a trigger for some pretty big rain, particularly near the coast and offshore. And now we're starting to contract further southwards with our rainfall generally, and further offshore with our rainfall generally. So see how we're contracting overnight, Saturday night, Sunday. We're contracting all of our rainfall down through the southern Cassowary Coast. We're clearing out the Daintree Coast, and we're pushing it down into the Herbert-Burdekin Coast, which is where we're going to go next. And then beyond that, we're looking at some showers and some isolated thunderstorms coming in from inland towards the coastline. And you can see that there through various times over the course of the next few days. But generally speaking, what's our time of greatest impact? Basically from tonight, overnight tonight, all the way through Friday, and then even into the first part and at least the first half of Saturday, and then we start to contract it southwards the back half of Saturday. All over by Sunday morning for this part, all right? This part down here, as we head down towards Ingham, Townsville, is the next part we need to deal with. When it comes to maximum sort of winds we can expect through this area, if we take a look, this model tends to be a little bit exaggerative, the Access C. It's a high-resolution model, and that's why we use it. But when there's a cyclone around, sometimes it gets a little bit too trigger-happy with some of the winds it shows. So what we find is if we use this model, generally speaking, we're sort of in the ballpark, but we might get the sort of areas slightly wrong. We're sort of in the ballpark, though, for intensity. So you can see 30 to 35 knot southeasterlies developing right across this area from Cairns up to Cooktown over the course of the overnight early morning period. And then we see those winds continue through most of tomorrow. And you can see on the southwestern side that's squeezing here around Cairns to Cooktown. So this squeezing, by the way, which is creating the bigger winds around the 35 to 40 knot winds, this squeezing is happening because we got big mountain ranges, the orientation of the coastline creating a bit of friction, and so we have a bit more accelerated airflow through the coastline, and we have this squeezing between the low and the coast, and the other squeezing between the low and a high way down south. It's south of your screen, way south of your screen. All right, so there's a couple of different elements in play as to why we have this accelerated airflow through this Cairns to Cooktown area, and that accelerated airflow will gradually shift southwards with the cyclone. Now, as I say, the model's not very good at cyclones, so we don't want to go too far ahead with this model, but just understand that that accelerated airflow that we're going to get through Cooktown, Port Douglas, Daintree tomorrow, that will start to shift southwards down into the Cassowary Coast as well. All right, so just understand that. Let's have a look at the HAFS model. So the HAFS model is designed to look at tropical cyclone wind fields. It does struggle a little bit when there's not a fully formed cyclone, and so we do have to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, but it's probably going to be our best bet when it comes to cyclone wind fields. And you can see, once again, the same thing operating here. overnight tonight, early tomorrow, 25 to 35 knot sustained winds. Obviously, gusts might be stronger than that. We can see if we go to wind gusts, we've got 35 to 40 knot wind gusts, especially with showers coming through overnight tonight, early tomorrow. As we go through the day tomorrow, we see those winds gusting up to 40 to 50 knots, especially in offshore areas. Now, it's very important if you're in Cairns to understand the winds are coming from the southeast. So not all of Cairns is built the same there. Some parts of Cairns jut out. So we've got coastal suburbs that will jut out a little bit. Those areas like Palm Cove, for example, they're going to witness that southeasterly. Places on the other side of Yarrabah, they're going to witness the southeasterly. Cairns City might be a touch more sheltered. Then we've got some valleys around Redlynch and those sort of areas, right? Where the mountain ranges just to the west allow for a little bit of acceleration of that airflow. So this is a really good model because it can pick up those things. It's highly enough resolved that it can pick up little nuances in the wind flow and the airflow through this region. All right, so you can see there, the other area that's getting very strong winds is the Atherton Tablelands. Look at this, where those wind farms are. They're there for a reason, eh? And you can see why Atherton there, picking up potentially gusts up to 35 to 40 knots. So you folks on the Tablelands who think, oh yeah, this is just a coastal thing, just be aware there's some pretty big winds coming on the southern side of this, well before the cyclone comes your way, all right? Well before that. So this is all to do with that southeasterly flow on the western side. So nothing at this stage to do with the centre of circulation. It's just the pressure gradient squeeze plus some downslope acceleration plus some frictional acceleration between the landmass and the cyclone itself. All right, so that's the expectation there through this region. You can see then we're maintaining, I'll just take us out to 256, folks, so we can see most of the region again. Right, so we can see then that as the system tracks in a more southerly direction Friday night, Saturday morning, we've lost some of the data there, unfortunately. Oh, goodness me. We've lost some of the data. Anyway, the point of the matter is that wind field will contract with the rain field southwards. All right, so that's the expectation there for this particular system. So we will start to see a contraction of the wind field from as early as Saturday morning through the northern parts, and then probably through the day on Saturday through anyone north of Cairns. And then we'll see a contraction of the wind field, and this is important. Contraction southwards, but also, see this? See how it's just starting to build a wind field around it? And this is because it encounters some really favourable environmental conditions off the coast between Cairns and Townsville. Remember though, for the cyclone to take advantage of this, it has to be producing a lot of weather, a lot of big storms, chunky storms around the circulation. All right, so to take advantage of those good conditions, it's already got to have to take the initiative and develop some big storms. If it doesn't take that initiative and all the big storms are, 200 kilometres away in either direction, then the cyclone won't do anything, even if it encounters this really nice environment that it's about to encounter. But you do see a contraction southwards of the wind field, but also a contraction inwards of the wind field once it goes past Cairns. And that's because it does encounter more favourable conditions as it starts to move southwards. All right, so you can see there as we continue on Saturday afternoon into Saturday night, unfortunately, as I say, we've lost a couple of data points there, which is really disappointing because this is a really good model for wind field modelling. And then as we get to a stage where the system's coming towards the coast, Saturday night or Sunday morning, once again around that Cardwell, Ingham, Townsville, Tully area, which is the area we expect it to come onto the coast, you can see it is starting to contract that wind field into the Herbert coastline and the Cassary coast. And we could see sustained winds. And now I'm going to take you down to Townsville because that's a very important. Townsville, Ingham seems to be a really important part of this now as we bring the system down. So that's our final discussion on the Cairns district. If I haven't covered anything, one last thing, folks, and I almost forgot. Whenever we get, and this is always trigger your heads here for those of you who are in Cairns and also any of these little areas downslope of the mountain range. Whenever we have a cyclone, a low, or even a strong monsoon, and it's south of your region, this is one thing that catches a lot of people unawares. Now, we know that all the big winds are on the south side, right? But for you Cairns folks, what you've got to be aware of, and for Port Douglas and for all those areas around, you've got to be aware of this downslope acceleration. Wherever you got mountain ranges, see, look at these big winds that come out of nowhere for Port Douglas. See, look at these big winds that come out of nowhere for some of the northern suburbs of Cairns, right? And they're the downslope accelerated winds. So when we've got a strong westerly flow, gets accelerated as it goes down the mountain slope. So this is something you've got to be careful of on the backside of the system. Once all the rain is gone, this is your primary issue into that sort of Sunday time frame. While you think, oh yeah, the cyclone's gone, all the big winds are gone, beautiful. Watch out for this. This is a much more localised thing. Not all the suburbs will get it. Usually the suburbs out towards Smithfield, White Rock, those sort of areas that are very close to a mountain range, they're the ones that cop it. And we see 30 to 40 knot wind gusts coming out of those, all right? So just be aware on the backside of the system, and it creates some pretty dangerous driving conditions if you're driving on the range towards Coranda or in that little coastal area between Cairns and Port Douglas. This is a real hotspot for those downslope accelerated winds. Make sure you're aware of that on the backside, right? That's something the bomb doesn't warn you for. That's why you got us. All right, moving on. Let's go down to Townsville now for those Townsville folks who've been waiting patiently, because they look to be that ground zero area. So we do need to spend a lot of time talking about this region now. All right, we're going to kick off with a view at back to the EC model. Remember, I don't expect this to happen. I think this is a little bit too weak on this model, and the system's probably not going to be this far away. It's not going to hit way up there around Cairns. But this first part is the same. No matter what the cyclone does, the first part here is the same. Townsville, you're severe warned for rain and flooding and whatever the hell you're warned for, plus the winds, right? The only thing that concerns us in this first part is the winds. None of the flooding concerns us whatsoever, all right? In the first part. In the first part. Now, beyond the first part, that's when the rain starts to set in. But this first part, where we go into Thursday night, Friday morning, we see big winds, 20 to 30 knots sustained winds. Look at that, 30 to 35 knot sustained winds. Big winds up around Palm, Ingham, down around town, or probably just offshore off Townsville, out towards Alva Beach out here. So those sort of areas that jut out, oh yeah, big winds for them. Bigger winds than today. So if you thought today was windy, tomorrow's way windier. All right, as we continue into Friday evening, Friday night, into Saturday morning, those winds will continue. Now, at this point, this is where the computer models go a little bit silly. This one goes a little bit silly. Most of the others are keeping things in play. This one hits the coast up there around Cairns, right? And so the system comes onshore, and once it comes onshore, our flow on Saturday turns easterly. This is a nice flow for solid rain for the region, especially the Rolling Stone Ingham region. So when we start to see this type of flow pattern, we tend to see significant rainfall coming onto the coast. When we see the northeasterly, this is the time where Townsville shines. Townsville shines in a northeasterly flow pattern. So northeasterly for Townsville, east-northeasterly for Rolling Stone, Ingham. These areas will do very well in. When the flow turns more northerly, then our flow pattern, our rainfall prospects sort of shift south towards the Burdekin a bit more than Townsville. So those are the little nuances in the flow that we need to be aware about. Now, in this situation, remember, we're not interested in heavy rain today. We're not interested in heavy rain tomorrow. I know you've got a warning for it, but we're not interested. Ingham area, sure, there might be some increased showers. Locally tomorrow, there might be a little bit of shower activity. We're not expecting anything major tomorrow. Even into tomorrow night, we're probably just starting to see things overnight and early in the morning on Saturday start to take shape here. Now, that's only if the cyclone hits up around Cairns, all right? We don't expect it to hit that far north, but I've got to show it to you because this is our number one model. So our number one model says cyclone hits Cairns. Once the cyclone hits Cairns, bang, we get heaps of rain because we open up that easterly flow channel. And you can see our heaviest rainfall in the morning on Saturday or overnight Friday night into Saturday morning is this area from Townsville up to Ingham, where that east-northeasterly comes in. As our cyclone continues to track inland on Saturday, we can see widespread heavy showers and possible thunderstorms through the region, all right? And then we continue to maintain that shower and thunderstorm activity throughout Sunday, and then that's about all she wrote. We move to more isolated, scattered showers and isolated thunderstorms as we go into Monday. All right, so that's what the number one model says is going to happen. That's not what the Bureau think, that's not what we think, but it's an option that's on the table. Especially when you looked at the track map, there's an option there that allows that allows for that solution. So in this setup, our wind's probably maxing here at around about 35 knots offshore, 40 knots offshore, and our winds are probably maxing tomorrow at this stage. So you can see, yep, there they are, maxing out, particularly around places like Palm Island, Alva Beach, Cape Cleveland, maybe the north side of Maggie, those sort of areas, they're the ones. And Ingham not so much because Ingham's inland, but Halifax, Lucinda, these areas, 35 to 40 knots seems like a pretty safe bet for wind gusts tomorrow. All right. Now, this is where I want to take a different approach, because what I think is going to happen versus what that number one model tells us is going to happen are two different things. So let's go back to the HAFS model and let's have a look at what the HAFS model does. Alrighty, the HAFS model. So once again, wind gusts, same, right? The first part is all the same. Everything we talked about is the same. We're not anticipating heavy rain here, right? It's just a couple of showers, a little bit heavier up around Ingham, all right? Because it's just a southeasterly. We just do that. We just miss out whenever there's a southeasterly. And this system isn't going to be a landmark system that's going to change that for us. Right, now as we get into Friday night, Saturday morning, there's an increase in shower activity Friday night, Saturday morning. Not to the point where we're getting widespread heavy rain though, all right? So that's really important to note. Our heavy rain doesn't start until later on Saturday, through about lunchtime Saturday. And this is where we start to see our heavy rain. As I say, we're missing a couple of data points here, which is really disappointing. But the idea will be that the heavy rain will set in through the day on Saturday instead of Saturday morning. And our forecast radar reflects that. And this is for a system that's coming onto the coast more around where the bomb expected to come onto the coast, right? So more around that Ingham area, Townsville district, right? So this area here, this is the area that we're probably going to see the increase in rainfall as it comes into this region. So the idea being, if we go back to the models, sorry, they're throwing me off here. Right. So the idea being that as the system comes towards that Ingham region, we're going to see a big increase in rainfall through this area in the last 6 to 12 hours before that system gets to the coast. So if the system's getting to the coast at 4 a.m., all right, we're probably seeing a big increase in rainfall from about early to mid-afternoon. If the system's getting to the coast at 10 p.m. Saturday, we're going to start seeing a big increase in rainfall through the Townsville district about 10 a.m. that morning. All right, so depending on the forward speed of the system, about 12 hours before landfall will be when we start seeing some heavier rainfall. And we can see that rainfall sort of pushing up and around the circulation. And then you can see, as we continue, the system comes onto the coast and we maintain significant rainfall through the district after it comes onto the coast for quite some time as we get this east to northeasterly flow. Now the big difference in the setups, we're still getting lots of rain in both setups, all right? Both the Cairns setup gives us lots of rain and the Tully, Ingham, Cardwell crossing gives us lots of rain. Now as we continue and we have a look at our winds, let's have a look at what's going on here. So everything's the same until tomorrow. Everything's the same until Saturday morning. Now, it's only after Saturday morning where things get a little bit more hectic in this region. And so what we start to see is as we push into mid-afternoon, our sustained surface winds are now up around 35 to 40 knots in these areas off the coast of Ingham, off the coast of Innisfail, and off the coast of Townsville. This is a much sharper and stronger wind field in this setup. These are sustained surface winds, an extra 5 to 10 knots on top. Once again, the big understanding for Townsville, just like I showed for Cairns folks, you need to understand southeasterly winds do not provide us with big winds for the whole city. Southeasterly winds tend to be primarily located, we'll do this way, all right, so they're primarily located down around Mount Elliot. So Mount Elliot tends to see, there it is there. So Mount Elliot tends to see significant winds, and they move down slope into Alligator Creek. So those are hot spot for winds in the south to southeasterly flow. We can also see around Harvey's Range out the back of Rupert's Wood and Rangewood. Obviously, winds are a little bit stronger there because we're elevated. And then we can see some of those extending out towards Rolling Stone because they've got some big mountains as well. For Townsville, the southeasterlies tend to kick up around about just west of the airport, up around Pallaranda and out towards Bluewater, and especially Maggie Island. Maggie Island is very susceptible to that southeasterly flow, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Maggie picking up 5 to 10 knots extra compared to Townsville. So Townsville City is a little bit more sheltered. Some of the suburbs that aren't quite as sheltered, probably around Stewart, because they're fairly close to a little hill, and Mount Stewart, of course, and maybe Annandale, sometimes not as sheltered because sometimes we get that acceleration of that airflow down that hill. So that's what we're looking for through the region, folks. Everything's the same here until we get to Saturday. On Saturday, we see far more wind in this setup, developing through the region, and we see wind gusts. These are the dangerous wind gusts that start to come in on Saturday afternoon, and then Saturday night is when we see those winds peaking through the region. And this is really, really important understanding here, that the winds here will be much stronger in this type of setup. And the winds here will be much stronger over a much larger area because the system's a little closer to us, and it's tapping into that nicer environment, and it's starting to wrap up. See how it's starting to wrap that wind field up as it gets closer to the coastline. So this is a really important understanding for the Townsville district. All right, once the system has crossed the coastline, the expectation is we're getting some fairly fresh, we're getting strong northerlies, around about 50 knots or so, gusting to about 50 knots or so. And then the northerlies, the big thing to understand for Townsville in the northerlies is nothing's blocking them. So if you remember back to Kirralee, there wasn't much wind on the front side for a lot of us unless we lived up on a hill. And on the back side, if you lived on the coastline, you would have thought that second half was way worse than the first half. And this is the reason why. When we take a look at the way Townsville's orientated, we can see that the northeasterly coming onto the coastline is going to push directly onto the coast and not go through too many obstructions. So the idea here will be that we're able to push those strong winds, and we're able to push them all the way into the suburbs, right? So we're able to push those northeasterlies at 25, 35, maybe up to 50 knots at times with any squally showers into the suburbs. We can't really do that with the southeasterly. That's why the southeasterly is primarily focused on at the bottom of mountain ranges and on the Maggie Island and places around the exposed coast where you see where Pallaranda sort of juts out. Those are the areas where we tend to see the greatest effect of the southeasterly winds. The northeasterlies, the whole town is susceptible to them. And the same would apply for a lot of our towns on that section of coastline, i.e. Home Hill. Probably Home Hill is just a little bit inland, but places like Kungalla, very susceptible to the northeasterly, and generally places all the way down towards Bowen are susceptible to that northeasterly. All right, so end result in this type of setup will be very similar conditions today, very similar conditions tomorrow to the Cairns setup, very similar. So southeasterly winds, very little rain in this area though. And then as we go into Saturday, that's when things change and they get more extreme here if the cyclone follows the track down towards Ingham. All right, so that's where we are with the Townsville district. And then, by the way, for those wondering, well, how long is all this going to stick around for? Look, we're probably seeing continuation of some showers, and those showers could be heavy, but there's going to be lots and lots of breaks, right? And so when we take a look at this modelling, once we get to the coast, Sunday we can see there's a nice little convergence setup developing in the northerly flow, so that could give us 100 mils fairly quick in that setup. But then as we go into Monday, we can see just more so just showers, spotty showers, heavy at times, but no major convergence bands coming through the region at that stage, all right? So not a hell of a lot of follow-up rainfall there for the Townsville district in this setup. And the AI modelling, we always like to use the AI modelling. We're finding that it's a lot more accurate than the numerical weather prediction modelling in these big events. It doesn't tell us how bad things get, because it smooths the numbers and it's smoothed with time, but generally speaking, it gets the locations pretty close. All right, and the AI modelling is doing the same thing here. It's telling us nothing to worry about today and tomorrow with regards to rainfall, and then it's saying, except in Ingham, of course, Ingham, we're still seeing quite a bit of shower activity up there, right? But then as we go into Saturday afternoon, you can see big increases in showers locally, Saturday afternoon, heavy rain developing in Ingham first. Notice heavy rainfall down around here about Bowen Whitsundays. We're going to you next, all right? So don't leave yet. All right, as we go through, we can see now heavy rainfall is setting in Saturday night, Sunday morning, and then you can see significant rainfall through the district on Sunday, pushing through. This is our peak time of heavy rain. This is our peak time, potentially, if the system starts wrapping up. This is also our peak time, just ahead of its crossing, of where we see our peak winds as well. Because remember, we do potentially expect a little bit of a wrap-up as it gets into this area. As we go through, we can see heavy rain continues into Sunday night, and then as we move into Monday, you'll notice the heavy rain penetrates inland towards Charters Towers, Pentland, Torrens Creek, maybe Hughenden. These are, particularly once we get west of Hughenden, these are areas that don't want rain. Definitely don't want rain west of Hughenden right now. So the idea is, though, unfortunately, it does look as though it's going to go west of Hughenden longer term. And we're left with a few showers locally, all right? So not too much there to deal with longer term. So it's just a one sort of violent day, Saturday, and then the first half of Sunday might still be very, very active as the system's coming onto the coast and just moving inland. That part's the most sort of active and violent phase of this weather event for this area. So don't go planning anything outdoors whatsoever on Saturday as the rain starts to set in through the day. Don't plan anything for the first half of Sunday either. We're still going to see some pretty intense conditions on Sunday. At this stage, the most intense conditions for the Townsville district, and Townsville district, I'm referring to Ayr, I'm also referring to Ingham. We're talking about the back end of Saturday, so Saturday evening into Saturday night, and then into early Sunday morning. That's going to be our most intense period of weather. And our peak intensity could be up to about 60 knots in terms of wind gusts, up to about 110, 120k an hour wind gusts, all right? So that's our peak intensity potential if the system wraps up. If it doesn't wrap up, we're probably just looking at maxing at about 90 to 100k an hour. So that's the difference, right? If it wraps up, we get that extra 20k, and that extra 20k bumps us right up into that edge of potential structural damage for weak structures. 100, we're not going to see much structural damage. We might see a couple of trees and a few branches down, right? But when we get to 120, it gets a little bit more serious. Nothing too dramatic, but just a little bit more serious if you got little tin shack or a wooden shed somewhere, a tin shed there that's not shed safe accredited like our sponsors do. You might see your shed go down, 120. All right, but you won't see your shed go down I hope you don't, at 90. So that's the expectation. Now, we're going to go down to the Bowen Whitsundays area. Before we do, folks, if you like this and it helped explain stuff, make sure you check out our subscription service at weatheriq.com.au/subscribe, up the top right on your screen. $32.95 a year, and you get daily forecasts throughout the wet season for Queensland and twice weekly for the NT and WA, Northwest WA. So if you are interested and you want to support us, $32.95 gets you all the forecasts. All these others are little extras. Maximum one is $69.95 for everything. Okay, so just thank you for those of you that do support us, and for those of you that do enjoy what we do for you, and you help us do what we love to do as well. So thank you. All right, as we go down, we're going down to the Whitsundays region now. Whitsundays and by association the Mackay area. Right, at this point in time, with the cyclone expected to hit the coast probably around Townsville, Ingham. Once again, folks, remember, we're looking here at the time frames, all right, down here, bottom right. All right, the system hitting the coast around Ingham, Tully, Townsville, maybe as far south as the Burdekin. All right, let's have a look. What can we expect? The next couple of days, what do you reckon you can expect? If Townsville can expect not much, What do you reckon you're expecting? Pretty same, eh? Not much. Few showers. The big thing you've got that Townsville doesn't is the orientation of the coastline is a lot more northwest southeast, which allows those southeasterly showers onto the coast. And then you've got a couple of mountain ranges here, right? And there's those mountain ranges out the back of Mackay, up through Prossie. Yeah, those help create a little bit of shower activity, enhance the shower activity. Right, as we start to move into Saturday, here's where things go different. All right, so Saturday, we start to develop heavy rain. In fact, what might happen on Saturday, believe it or not, even though the Townsville, Ingham, Cardwell area might be ground zero, guess what? You're the first folks getting more rain than them, all right? And the reason is, as we go into this, we can see that our 950s and our 7, you can see here how we've already shifted our flow. So Townsville hasn't shifted its flow yet. It's still getting that southeaster. You have shifted your flow. You're getting an east to northeasterly. So the heavy shower and possible rain activity starts here before it starts in Townsville, even though the system is hitting Townsville. We think it's going to hit near there anyway. All right, so don't quote me on that yet. That might still change. We've still got 2 days, all right? As we go, we can see heavy rainfall setting in through this entire Central Coast Whitsundays area Saturday afternoon. And once again, look at your friends up north. They're only just starting to get rain, and for you, the heavy rain's already starting to set in. As we go into Saturday evening, we can see widespread heavy rain areas developing here. Why, Nitzo? Why is there so much heavy rain here, but the cyclone's way up in Ingham or Cardwell or Tully? Why are we getting all the rain? Why is this area in the middle missing out? Once again, we come back to that flow pattern. Let's have a look. 950s. What do we got? We got this beautiful northerly flow coming into this region. That's a deeply tropical. That's the monsoonal northerly that starts up around the Torres Strait. Well, actually, it starts in the northern hemisphere, but comes over the Torres Strait and then gets basically slingshotted into the coastline. And you're the first folks that get that wind regime slingshotted into your coastline. And so that's why the rain kicks off here before it even kicks off near ground zero. All right, so as we continue, we can see very heavy rainfall continues Saturday night, Sunday morning. Look at the intensity of some of these. Now listen, this is the AI model. It's not going to show us the real intensity of rainfall, but the fact that it's showing us that sort of number, 40 to 50 mils in 6 hours, in reality is probably more around 100, possibly 150 over the 6 hours in reality, right? So really intense rainfall just out the back of Mackay on those mountain ranges, and really pretty intense rainfall region-wide at this point, okay? So no one's really missing out all the way down to St. Lawrence at this point. So understand there what we're dealing with here is a little bit different to what we're dealing with up north. The flow pattern change happens earlier. You're in a really nice spot to see lots of convergence and lots of heavy rain through the Whitsundays and the Mackay region. And eventually, as the cyclone pushes inland on Sunday, we're still maintaining a fairly significant little convergent band into the southern half of this region, even after the system has moved inland. All right, so that's the AI model's take, and you can see there's quite some heavy showers continue through the coastline beyond. Now, I just want to show you some of the wind field that might happen if we see the cyclone go towards Townsville and go towards Ingham, that area, and potentially the Burdekin. I want to show you the sort of wind field we might expect through this area. Just so we don't, no surprises. We don't want any surprises in a cyclone. That's what I say to my subscribers all the time. There ain't nothing good about a weather surprise when you've got bad weather around. If you know it's coming, you can prepare for it. If you don't know it's coming and it just hits you, that's when the shit hits the fan. So here, what do we got? 25 to 35 knots southeasterlies. They're going to stick around. Now, we're just losing it here because the system's going a little bit north tonight. And then as we come to Friday, the system starts to move southwards, so we come back into picture. But generally speaking, 25 to 30 knot sustained winds from the southeast here. All right? As we start to move into Friday night, Saturday morning, our winds just around Bowen begin increasing a touch. Our winds around the Whitsundays might start to nudge 30 knots sustained. And then as we go through into Saturday, once again, we lose a couple of data points here, so I can't show you the full day on Saturday. But what I can show you is that between Saturday morning and Saturday afternoon, see how we've bumped up the numbers? See, we've gone from 25 to 30 knots. at some stage through Saturday morning 7 a.m. and Saturday 4 p.m, we've increased that airflow pattern and we've developed this convergent band. Look at this. We've got this northeasterly and this easterly coming together right over Hamo. There'll be some very sharp and strong squalls here with wind gusts probably around the 50 knot range in this little squally area. All right. Our cyclone is still hundreds of kilometres up to the north, trying to tighten up, but not succeeding because it's going to run out of time. So that takes us through till 4 p.m. We lose our data point at 7, I think, and we get our data point back at 10. So you can see here that there's further significant winds in the region at 25 to 30 knots sustained, and we get a situation here where we've got potential for very strong wind gusts in these little areas. See this little pocket? You blink and you miss it. Right here around Mackay, you've got an easterly and an east-northeasterly. When they get squeezed together, this one at 30 knots, that one at 30 knots, all hell breaks loose, right? So we get big rain that just suddenly develops out of nowhere. So that's what we're looking for in this section of coastline. This region continues to see 25 to 30 knots into Saturday night. Sustained winds. So once again, wind gusts are 40 to 50 knots. And look at this area around Mackay, that little spot, right? You can see 50 knots. Yeah, this is pretty serious stuff. Even though you're so far away, look how far away you are from the thing, all right? So understand the area of effect here of this system is extremely strong, extremely large, I should say. Right, as we continue, we can see that there's a situation where we maintain the northeasterly flow into this section of coastline through Sunday, and we continue to see a little bit of convergence coming onto that Whitsunday coast on Sunday. So there's some really good potential for rainfall here, and the sort of amounts. Let's have a look at some of the amounts, hey? And so we're sort of not just guessing. Let's have a look here. This takes us out to Monday night. So Monday night, we're looking, by Monday night, we should be getting somewhere around 200 to 300 mils in parts of the Whitsundays. Now, not everywhere, but particularly around mountain ranges. Now, remember, this is the AI model. The AI model won't pick up the individual falls that might be a lot bigger than this, but it gives us a roundabout estimate of where everyone should be getting rain. And the good news is we're extending the rain into parts that need it. And there's still parts, believe it or not, that need rainfall, significant rainfall. And these areas around Claremont, Moranbah, these areas still need rain. Emerald especially needs rain. So we're really hoping, Emerald's going to be right on the southern edge, so we're really hoping that Emerald gets a bit of rain out of this as it pushes inland. But we're also extending some of that rain down towards Rocky and Gladstone and those sort of areas. In the longer term time frame as well. So it's a really nice rain producer because it's such a large system and because it's so poorly put together. It's such a large rain producer for the entire coast. We take us out to Queensland and we have a look at Queensland's rainfall, and you'll notice how big and how large and widespread the rainfall is here. It's ridiculously widespread, right? So this is the good thing about it. The good thing about it is that. The bad thing is the messaging to you guys and girls. How do we get the message across that just because it hits Cairns doesn't mean we're not going to get anything in Mackay from it? Just because it hits Townsville, we still need to worry about it in Mackay, all right? That's the messaging we've got to get across. And that's why I've been getting so frustrated on social media when people are going, oh, you said it's going to hit Cairns, now it's going to hit Townsville, tomorrow it's going to hit Tully, tomorrow, the next day it's going to hit Mackay. Listen, it's not about where the centre hits. Until we get down to Townsville, Burdekin, Bowen, Mackay, that's when we start looking at the centre a bit more, because by that stage, the centre tightens up. All right, and then the centre does matter. But if it hits up here around Cairns, Tully, the centre doesn't matter as much, because all the big effects are not going to be over Cairns or Tully. The big effects are going to be south, well south, not south as in 10 Ks, well south of the circulation. That's why we don't care if it crosses the coast up around Cairns as much as we care if it crosses around Townsville, and as much as we will care if the models suggest it's going to cross around Bowen or something like that. We will care a lot more about the centre if it goes down that way, because we know that the wind field and the rain field will tighten up. All right. That's it. That's all I've got for you. Let's have a look. Right, I'll take some questions now. on things that we haven't talked about. So if you're asking me questions about the Cairns, Townsville, Mackay area, we've already talked about that. So we're not going to talk about it again, folks. So I'll ask you to go back to the part where I've already talked to you about those areas. Right, Saturday FNQ. Jules, Saturday FNQ people, be prepared for the Seymour to go over like usual, and the highway will be shut once again. Yeah, that's fairly safe advice. Mike, Mackay up next. Yep, we've just done Mackay. David, had Katabatic winds off Mount Louisa a couple of years ago. Yeah. We tend to get them. They're a little bit more localised for Townsville, a little bit harder to get in Townsville. A lot of the time, the monsoon doesn't have the sort of kick that it does up around the Cairns district, so a little bit harder for Townsville to get those. Upper Burdekin catchment forecast, please. Upper Burdekin, let me think. That's up here in that Greenvale area, isn't it? Yeah, all right, let's have a look. Greenvale. This is for Liz Elizabeth Schmidt. All right, so the forecast here for this region is a little bit more varied, because if we get the system tracking a little further north, so this is an example here. If we get the system tracking a little further north like the Euro has, hitting the coast around Cairns, this creates a situation where Greenvale might get a little bit more rain. And through this upper Burdekin catchment through here, we might see a little bit more rain in this type of setup than we might in the setup where, say, a system hits the coast around Townsville. Although, in fairness, I'm not seeing too much evidence there of very heavy rain on the Euro either through this region. Let's have a look at some of our other models through this area. See what we can come up with. Yeah, it seems to be pretty stock standard, actually. I thought we'd see a little bit more than that in the northern solutions, but we're not seeing evidence of that. So it looks as though the models there are pretty keen on basically about 100 mils region-wide, with maybe some localised falls that are a little bit stronger than that, but nothing over the top here for that area. Despite the fact, and I think, okay, yeah, no, it makes sense in my head now when I think about it, because remember, if we do get a low that comes over the top of Cairns and goes into this region, it's not producing much weather because it's very weak. Whereas if we get a low that comes over the top of Townsville, it's producing a lot of weather on that along that track. So that's why we see this little tongue of potential heavy rain down here into the Flinders, and not so much in the upper Burdekin area, right? So the upper Burdekin catchment looks like a pretty solid sort of 75 to 150 mils, I think, for most of the upper Burdekin catchment. We're not seeing too much evidence of them totally missing out, but we're also not seeing much evidence in any scenario that sees the upper Burdekin get a shit ton of rain. You can see the region around Charters Towers. Yeah, there could be some very heavy rain through Charters Towers, especially in the setup where we cross the coast around Ingham, maybe Townsville, and we pull that cyclone in after crossing the coast, and the cyclone's tightening up as it crosses the coast. So this is an opportunity for Charters Towers to potentially cash in and get a fair bit of rainfall through that area around Ballyando, Charters Towers, out towards Hewenden. And unfortunately, as I said, we don't want any more rain through this Flinders catchment, but it does look as though there's going to be at least some heavy rain extending to the Flinders catchment. So that's the brilliant update. Thanks, Nitso. No worries, Jules. Can you please tell me where I can go to see on the maps what time tomorrow Atherton will see the heaviest rain and wind? VB, I can't tell you that. We have, if you're a subscriber, VB, we have maps that you can centre on Atherton, and then you can go through the different, this guy used to teach me sports. I like the bloke, but I don't know how he got onto this. Jake. Hey, Jake, how are you, mate? Yes, I used to be a teacher. That is true in a past life. Troy, hey, mate, been following you since the Nitso and Trav days. Do you think flights will be... mate, I can't tell you anything about flights. Sorry, Troy. Saturday morning into Townsville. Saturday morning's too early. I mean, it's 30 to 35 knots through Townsville. So, look, I don't think we're going to be in a situation where, they're going to be cancelling flights over 30, 35 knots. Yeah. Lotus, we'll do we don't want to start putting new things into the weather centre in the middle of a cyclone, mate, so we can't put the Innisfail overlay. Travel path after landfall. So Georgetown, too far north at this stage, mate. So Georgetown, not going to get huge rain from this in the preceding few days, I wouldn't think. But if the system then just sort of mucks around the northwestern region, around the Gulf, there is a chance there that we do start to accumulate rainfalls in areas that really don't want rain, and Georgetown would be one of those areas. But for now, that's probably too far ahead, right? Too far ahead. Let's just focus on the initial crossing and the early part of the forecast after the crossing. And that's why we want to focus on the coast and that Charters Towers to Moranbah area for the inland. And then once we have a better idea at what it might do longer term, we can start looking for what effects it might have on Normanton, on out towards Mount Isa, those sort of things. So I think that's a little bit too far ahead right now. We want to sort of stay on topic for these regions, and then we can start looking ahead to those other areas. Belinda, awesome. Nitso, love the candor. Thanks, mate. Yeah, I got a bit heated there. I just hate it when the Bureau shows so much freaking incompetence. Just, how can you get people double checking, triple checking cyclone maps? These are the number one thing they're supposed to be good at. How do you make that error? Anyway, Tanya, would you like? No, nothing like Yasi. No, from a size. Oh, yeah. Look, way weaker winds. Large gale radius, sure, yeah, Tanya. But it's not bringing Yasi vibes to me. It's just bringing monsoon low vibes, right? And if it gets south of Townsville, or if it gets down towards Townsville, it might become a tropical cyclone. It might get very close to wrapping up. Jules, thanks, Nitto. 100% honest, not like mainstream media bullshit. Yeah, that's why I do these, to try and counter some of the mainstream media bullshit. Tian Fox, best in the biz. Thanks, mate. Damien, Gladstone. All right, yeah, that's a good call. We haven't talked about Gladstone. So once this system moves inland, what we're going to see, or as the system gets to the coast, what we're going to see, so this is where it gets a bit interesting for Gladdy. So at the moment, we're getting southeasterlies. They're really boring for Gladstone, right? Southeasterlies, absolutely boring. Now, at some stage, what's going to happen here through this region is we're going to open up an easterly moisture channel. That starts up around Mackay first. We talked about the Mackay with Sundays, and we talked about how that starts on Saturday for them. Now, for Gladdy, what's going to happen here, we're going to kick it off around Yeppoon, St. Lawrence. That's going to kick off on Sunday, and then we're going to start spreading that moisture southwards. Now, listen, you're not going to get the sort of stuff that they're going to get, but you will get some nice shower activity through here as we push into Sunday, Monday. At least that's what we think. The only way I don't see this happening is if we get that really loose shit system that hits up around Cairns. If it hits up that far north, we might not be able to open up that moisture channel to you. All right, but if it hits where we think it's going to hit, which is that Cardwell, Tully, Ingham, Townsville, maybe Burdekin area, right? If it hits in that region, we should be opening up this moisture channel to you as we go into Sunday and into Monday. And once again, I don't want you thinking this is drought-breaking rain for you, but there is potential there for some nice showers, thunderstorms maybe over inland parts especially, and reasonable accumulation of rainfall. And then on the back side of this, at the end of the week, Gladdy gets a bit of a trough coming through. So there might be a line of showers and thunderstorms that comes through Gladdy as we go into Thursday, Friday, mate. So overall, it's not going to be a bad weather week in terms of rainfall potential. You can see there's possibility of 100 plus millimetres there. But listen, I got to caveat this, because if we get that shit thing that hits up around Cairns, that really weak thing, I don't see you being able to get that sort of number, even if the model does suggest you will. I just don't, you're not going to get that number. You're not going to get 500 mils out of some shit thing that hits up around Cairns. Models having a laugh there. But the idea is that, if we can get something half decent, hitting the Herbert Burdekin, your moisture channel will open up big time. We're going to see some of that moisture come down into the region from the monsoon. And yeah, Gladdy gets a decent chance. Haley, where is the low expected to go when it goes inland? Mate, good question. And this is why I don't want to study too much into what is the likelihood of rain across Western Queensland. Now, what we're seeing this afternoon is clearly a propensity for the modelling to show a system tracking inland, right? So this is the problem, right? It goes into the areas that have just copped a shit ton of rain, and that's not good news for anyone. And you can see here that as we push into Monday and then on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday, we continue to move the system westwards. That's probably the one saving grace here, is that we're continuing to move the system westwards, potentially all the way into the NT, rather than the last low. Remember, the one that caused all the flooding, it decided it was just going to chill in here for ages, right? And that's what caused the flooding out there. So the idea would be perhaps a bit of a violent period of heavy rainfall as this comes through, and then hopefully, touch wood, fingers crossed, cross everything, that it continues moving into the NT, right? We don't want to see it stall here. Some of the modelling yesterday was suggesting it might stall in here, and that would be a worst case scenario. But for now, looks as though we're going to sort of push it away to the west, mate. So that's what we're expecting at the moment with that longer term time frame. But I don't want to start looking at rainfall totals for Western Queensland yet until we've got a pretty good handle on exactly where it's crossing the coast, probably tomorrow night. And then we can maybe start talking about how much rain could fall over inland areas when we know the track a little bit more. All right. Steve Mitchell, love your work. Thanks, mate. No worries, Steve. Thanks for joining us. How do you think the rain will be for southeast Queensland as the system travels down the coast? Yeah, not much. I can't see southeast Queensland getting much out of this. Yeah. Julian, mate, yeah. A couple of showers, couple of storms, couple of places. I don't see any major rainfall from this for southeast Queensland. The only way that would happen is if the system was to do one of these crazy things here. And, you know, there's 2 models out of, 100 and something that are doing that crazy thing, so it's not even worth looking at. But yeah, mate, just a few showers. Listen, at the end of the week, I think there's a trough coming through, so you might get a few showers and storms out of that too. Damien, we just talked about the Capricornia, mate. We talked about Gladstone and Rocky, that entire region. We start with that rain on the north around St. Lawrence on Sunday, and we bring it south. As we bring it south, we probably weaken the amount of rain, but that area around St. Lawrence and Rockhampton, yeah, it looks pretty interesting. We are in Alva Beach in a caravan. Oh, mate, yeah, that's a question you can't ask me. I can't give you advice on a caravan. Caravans aren't all built the same, eh? There's some pretty good caravans around these days. Yeah, I can't give you advice. All I can tell you is that Alva Beach is probably going to get 90 to 100 km/h winds at some stage. They are open to the southeasterly, so expect those winds even as early as tomorrow. But certainly as the system gets a little closer, we'll probably see some pretty big winds around Alva, mate. But I can't give you advice on a caravan, man. That's not my area. I don't know if you're going to be all right in a caravan. I wouldn't think it's advisable in strong winds to be in a caravan. I mean, I'm just guessing, but being in a caravan in a because you got to think this is a Cat 1 cyclone, whether it's named or not. It's a Cat 1 cyclone, right? It's got Cat 1 winds. So yeah, mate, I wouldn't be in a caravan in a Cat 1 cyclone. I'd be going to chill at the pub or something. I don't know. I'd be paying $50 and staying at a pub somewhere for the night. Wouldn't be in a caravan, that's for sure. Right. Thanks, Nitz. I appreciate this one from YouTube. Sassy. Thanks, Sassy. Good to see YouTube actually still survived. Wow. Love your blow up about the bomb. Yeah, just that shit shouldn't happen, man. That shit just should not happen. Listen, they've either stuffed your map up or they've stuffed our map up. Our map goes to thousands of our subscribers, thousands of members of the public. That's where our map goes. So if they've stuffed our map up, they've stuffed thousands of people that rely on us for advice. All right? And all the other commercial organisations, like I won't talk about them, but all the other commercial organisations that have thousands and tens of thousands of members would have got the same map that we got. So they've either effed us around or they've effed you around. In both situations, that's shit and it's unacceptable from our one official point of truth that can't get the freaking truth out properly. Anyway. All right. Stephen Plant. Hey, Planty, how are you, mate? I've met you before. Hi, Netto. Can you still rip down the leg spinners? I was wondering with the Ashes coming up if someone from Charters Towers would say something about the old Nitzo leggies. Also, from an ergon point of view, how do you think Charters Towers, Cairns and Bowen? Yeah, mate. Look, there's going to be a period there of very heavy rainfall for all those areas that you mentioned. So Charters Towers will start getting heavy rain after the cyclones cross. You're not going to get much. Listen, you're not going to get too much before the crossing, right? But after the cyclone crosses, yeah, that's it there. So see how the cyclone crosses up around Ingham. So as it's crossing around Ingham, Charters Towers just starting to get a bit of rain. But as it sort of continues tracking in this west-southwest direction, this is Charters Towers gets this period of really heavy rain there around Saturday or probably Sunday. I'd say Sunday morning into Sunday night. That's the real period of heavy rain for Charters Towers. And then it almost like a tap turns off. It basically switches off as we go into Monday. So Sunday night, Sunday afternoon. No, we'll play it safe here, bud. We'll go Sunday about lunchtime through to Monday around lunchtime. That's when the whole thing sort of should be moving away, right? But Charters Towers are going to go through a period of very heavy rainfall in that time frame because they're going to find themselves just on that southern edge, just as our cyclone is just starting to tighten up a little bit, right? So it won't be as loose if it hits Townsville. It won't be as loose as it is if it hits up in Cairns area. All right, so that's where Charters Towers would lie. And obviously with Ayr, Bowen, all those areas we just talked about, we spent a fair bit of time talking about the Townsville-Burdekin area. We talked about the fact that Saturday night, Sunday morning, we're going to see some big rain through there, down around the Whitsundays at some point on Saturday, into Sunday, and then continuing westwards after that point. So so good rain, mate, for those areas. But listen, not an ongoing event. And that's really important, right? Not an ongoing event. It happens and it's over, all right? And that's, I guess, something for you folks at Ergon that you can sort of hang your hat on. You know that you're going to get this period of big weather, but you know it's not going to be there for, like the Townsville things where they were there for a week and you couldn't get power out to people because shit was underwater everywhere. So we're going to see one big day, or the coastline maybe 1.5 big days. Inland areas, maybe just less than one big day. All right, and then it continues out west. Hopefully, fingers crossed. What's with the GFS model hitting the coast, going back off the coast? Yeah. No, we don't use Tony. We don't use the GFS, buddy. The GFS does a pretty good job in American cyclones. It just, I don't know. It must like rum or something. It must get on the Bundies. The person who programs the GFS must get on the Bundy rums and go, right, what crazy thing can we do for the Aussies today? Because it is actually a pretty good model when you talk about it in the States, right? And people in the States swear by it. But for Australia, my God, it's terrible. Stephen, why listen to the bomb? Yeah. No, look, they're your point of truth. 90% of the time they do an okay job. But 10% of the time they do stuff-ups like that. Last year, what was last year? Last year they decided we're going to do a bit of maintenance on our radars in the middle of a freaking severe weather event. Like, what idiot thinks of this? Like, and what idiot that they tell it to goes, you know what, I reckon it's great. We're going to put this mob in severe weather warning and we're going to work on the radar. That sounds like a great idea. That's what frustrates me about the organisation, because they're not that stupid. There's actually a bunch of really smart people that work for a really dumb organisation. That's what frustrates me, because I understand, and I know people that work there. They're freaking intelligent people that work for one of the stupidest organisations I've ever seen. I don't get it. Anyway, see, this is what happens. He's get me started on the bomb. All right. How are we looking for Blackwater? Blackwater, that's east of Emerald, isn't it? Blackwater. So let's go over to the Emerald overlay. Who's asked me that? We'll do Rolliston while we're doing Blackwater, eh? We'll do Blackwater and Rolliston together. Otherwise, they're too small to just do separately. Right, Emerald. Now you're gonna have to remind me. Rolliston, Blackwater. Yeah? Yep, beautiful. All right. So what we're at the mercy of here is how far inland does our moisture penetrate, or advect, all right? So we're not going to get anything on the front end. Don't go in there expecting a shit ton of rain in the next couple of days. Nothing going to be happening in the next couple of days. After the system has crossed the coast to the north of you, that's when we're opening up our moisture channel. Now, it's not going to be anything like what the coast is going to get, right? So these areas are not going to get coastal rainfall, but they might get some pretty handy rain. And Blackwater, probably a better chance than Rolleston, because Rolleston's a little bit further southwest. All right, but the idea is here we would probably see some reasonable rainfalls in the northern half of the Central Highlands, and then maybe some light rainfalls in the southern half. Now, I'm not seeing dam filling stuff down here, but there is a chance that we get up around the Moranbah area and we get something a bit more decent up that way. Okay, so that's the expectation here. And then we've got a trough system that comes through on Thursday, Friday, and you might get some follow-up storm activity from that trough coming through. But as you know, in Rolleston and in Blackwater, you know, they're always hit and miss. Okay, you're never going to please everyone there. You know, 5 of you will get hit, 50 of you will get missed. That's the sort of stuff you're dealing with there at the end of the week. But in the first part of the week, after the cyclone has crossed the coast, yeah, sure, there's a pretty decent opportunity for rain, particularly up around Ballyando, Moranbah, Dysart, Middlemount, those areas in the north. Maybe Blackwater's on the southern edge. And Rolleston, you're going to get sort of the scraps off the table of what's going on up north, mate. So that's for Trev and Mark, who asked for... Mark asked for Rolleston. Trev, you asked for Blackwater. If you're asking for some numbers, yeah, there's a chance there we get into the 50 to 100s, and Rolleston maybe 20 to 50s. Let's have a look at the other AI model. Let's see what it's coming up with. GFSA, oh God, this could be telling me anything. Yeah, no, there's some nice numbers there too. So you can see there, Blackwater's picking up 100-ish, and even Rolleston's picking up a little bit more than 20 to 50 there, so 60, 70. So it's penetrate. It all comes down to how far west we can penetrate that moisture. You're going to be in a sort of boundary there where further west and south it's a bit dry, further east and north it's very wet. You're sort of going to be somewhere in that edge case scenario, right, between the two. And you should be able to snag yourself some pretty good rain after the cyclone has crossed the coast. Can I ask when Townsville will start to get the rain? Yeah, I think we talked about this, Leanne. Go back to the start of the broadcast, mate, where we did the Townsville part. Or you can wait till this is out on YouTube and I'll timestamp it all, okay? But we've already done Townsville. I don't want to talk about Townsville again. I counted 13 moists, PB, mate. Did you count how many times I might have sworn at the bomb? Thanks, Jay. Avoid flying into Cairns tomorrow night. Oh, it's going to be windy. I don't know if they were going to stop... not going to stop playing. I don't know. That's questions. That's not for me. Aiden, great info. Thanks, Nitzo. Hope it does track south into the Burnett area after crossing. Yeah, not looking likely, man. But what might happen for the Burnett, at least the northern part of the Burnett, is we might be able to snag ourselves some of that moisture, right? So we might be able to get some of that moisture from up north, up around Mackay, push down to the Capricornia, push down to the Wide Bay, maybe even penetrate as far west as the Burnett. And this is what some of the models are showing, mate. So you can see that moisture going down to Rocky, and then just getting into that Wide Bay area, and maybe just a bit of lighter rain extending down into the Burnett area. All right, so there's a chance there. And then, of course, you've got that trough towards the end of the week, right? That big trough coming across. See that big line of rain that comes across from the west? So that's a different system, but it's been fed by moisture from the remnants of the low. So what's happening there is we're getting that trough coming across, and away we go. We get a nice little touch up there with probably a line of showers and thunderstorms, and that should about do us for a fair while after that. I'm not seeing too much evidence of follow-up rain for that area. Kim Macca, Nitzo, feed it to the bomb. You saved us on 2. You're one honest act. Again, the bomb put at risk. Yeah, and this is the thing, man. As I say, the organisation, such a terrible organisation, but the people that work there are so intelligent. And there's some issue there for sure, right? Systemic issue at that place, because you can't have so many intelligent people that get dwarfed by so many dumb decisions that are made. And no checks and balances. How does that all work? No one knows. And no one asks the question. And when they ask the question, none of your business. It's our internal policies. That's the thing. Like, taxpayer money, bud. You need to be open and honest about how your shit performs. And getting a cyclone map wrong. How do you do that? How does someone not see that and go, hey, shit, you know our first cyclone map, the one that everyone's going to watch, well, maybe there's an error there that, yeah, we probably need to fix before we bring it out. How does no one see that? And how do we email the bomb and say, hey, listen, your first track map's shit, doesn't line up, and don't get a response? No response. And then suddenly tonight I've just been messaged that they fixed it. They fixed it and had I think now they've got the system for us crossing right over Townsville. Which, okay, fair enough, but it just doesn't line up with the data right now either. You know, so anyway, don't even get. No, I like Livio. Don't give Livio crap, Josh. I do like Livio. He's a good weather guy, but yeah. His organisation, I don't like his organisation. So just be clear here. The Bureau of Meteorology has good meteorologists. They have a terrible structure and a terrible organisation. All right? But they have good meteorologists. So I'm not attacking the Mets at the bomb, except for maybe whoever decided to let that track map out without double checking it, because that happens quite frequently, and that is a meteorologist's fault. So, you know, that's the thing. But I'm not having a chop at every single meteorologist. There's some smart, as I say, smart people that work there that are very good at their job. The organisation, dreadful at their job. Dreadful. So, I don't know, sack the lot of them and make meteorologists in charge. I reckon it'll run a hell of a lot better than the bureaucrats they've got it running the show at the moment. All right. It's just easy, tastes fresh. Someone's given GYG a plug. Just had to cancel our trip to Cairns next week. Why'd you cancel your trip next week? Next week's fine. Who said that? Michelle. Why, mate? Cairns is beautiful next. Have a look at Cairns next week. Let's have a look at it, mate. This is that knee-jerk reaction shit, like people sometimes do, right? Yeah, sure. There's bad weather in Cairns today. What do we got? So. Next week, look at this, Monday, nothing. Beautiful. A couple of showers and storms inland. Tuesday, a couple of showers and storms inland. Wednesday, beautiful. Thursday, beautiful. What are you cancelling your trip to Cairns for next week? That's the best possible week you could possibly go in Cairns in the middle of a wet season. Yeah, sure, there's a bit of rain that might pop up towards the end of the week into the weekend because the trough comes offshore and moves up north. But man, why cancel a beautiful trip to Cairns for a whole week because of what's going on right now? Man, come on. You've got to be a little bit more weather aware when you're making your travel plans, and don't just knee-jerk reaction cancel stuff. Right. I was worried, I was so disappointed. Is this system likely to do anything for Cairns or just south? No, we've already talked about that, Zoe. So go back. In fact, I talked about it. I talked about Cairns probably more than anyone. So this system for Cairns, first half. Once it goes past Cairns, not expecting much, except for those little gusty winds coming down the mountain. Hi, mate, just joined. How are we looking in Ingham? We've already talked about the Ingham area, mate. We talked about the Townsville region. We talked about the showers that'll push up to Ingham in the lead up. And then we talked about how Ingham should fare once we push that cyclone in towards that section of coastline, and how we're increasing the rainfall significantly through Ingham. So I'd ask you to go back to that Townsville part where we did talk about Ingham a fair bit, mate. Don't tell me that. I just paid $600. Oh, no, Michelle. Why did you do that, Michelle? That's what you got to be a bit more weather aware, mate. Stick with us. We won't stuff you around. We tell you the truth, eh? We don't F around and give you clickbait shit, all right? We don't ask you to like and share and we ask you to subscribe because that's how we survive. But we're not going to do it by making you afraid of shit. We're not going to do it by sending you big colour maps of the most weird colours you've ever seen. We don't do that shit here, all right? We talk about the science here. Nadine, thank you for that. My hubby can work next week. Hopefully he didn't watch it. Maybe he listened to some of the Panic Merchants, so he's called a week off work. Sarah, love your work from Airlie. Good stuff. Chris, north of Cooktown. Do you live there, mate, or are you just asking? Because it's a fairly significant sort of thing to talk about, Chris. So I'll wait for you to answer me here, mate. Chris Wyden. if you live there, we can talk about it. But if you're just asking, let's leave that, all right, because there's a lot of other stuff to talk about. But if you live there, let me know now, and I'll talk about that area, all right? But it's a very sparsely populated area, and I don't want to talk about it if you're not living there. Right, Christy Harrison, Pioneer Valley, same as Mackay. Whatever I said for Mackay will apply to the Pioneer Valley. All right, Chris says, a lot of people up here around Cape Flattery and Lizard Island. All right, mate, so let's have a look. All right, so Cape Flattery and Lizard Islands. One of these islands, I don't know which one Lizard is, but it's one of those ones over there, for sure. Right, Access C, North Queensland. Let's have a look what we can expect over the next couple of days, or at least the next 24 hours here. Yeah, so heavy rainfall tonight, pushing towards the northwest. And then as we continue on overnight, what we're seeing is waves of heavy rain. So you can see this first wave coming up, then another wave coming up. See how it just sort of randomly develops? You think the wave's gone, and then a new wave starts basically right over the old wave, all right? And then we get another wave. See this next wave that starts to develop on the western side of the circulation? So there's waves of heavy rainfall activity going through the region, and then we drop back to just shower activity. But these waves can produce significant rainfall. And then once we push the cyclone a little bit south and east, what happens is, I haven't got my little drawing tools here, but what happens is this southerly comes up and it mixes with this monsoonal westerly. And so this southerly up the Queensland northeast coast and then mixing with that monsoonal westerly creates this convergence zone just near and just offshore off the coastline. Maybe Cooktown might be a better one to look at there. Let me find Cooktown. Right, so this southerly and this westerly combine, and we see some very, very intense potential winds and rain just off the coast here, where that, so you can see it here, you can visualize it here, right? That southerly and that westerly. And where they meet, so the southerlies are pretty stable air mass, and the westerlies are real tropical air mass that's coming from the deep tropics. And so where they meet, there's a real potential for some pretty significant stuff going on through that region. The other thing that you've got to be aware of are those winds. They're going to be howling in there because this is a constant source of a constant place of convergence through that area north of Cooktown, right? So you can see southerlies and westerlies continue to collide on the western side of our cyclone, or low, right? So that southerly-westerly collision is what creates those new convergence, or those new waves that basically start from nowhere, right? So the idea is that we're expecting to see very, very heavy rainfall through that region, mate. So obviously this is not, it's not a great place to be for the next 24 hours because of that potential for very significant convergence. Now, once the cyclone starts to move southwards, we'll quickly shove that away, but that's not going to happen until probably mid-Saturday, around lunchtime Saturday, before we move all of our rainfall southwards. But there's going to be a substantial and significant sort of convergence zone just off the coast where the southerlies and westerlies. So that's more of a Lizard Island thing, I think. That needs to be aware of that, is that intensity of that southerly-westerly convergence, mate. That's the, yeah. Tegan, next update at this stage, Saturday night, just before the cyclone comes onto the coast. So the cyclone should come onto the coast Saturday night or Sunday morning. So we'll have an update there. Everyone will be a bit anxious, so we can go through step by step what we can expect, Tegan. So Saturday night, mate, is the next time I'm doing that. But listen, if you're a subscriber, you got $32 there, and you'd like to support us, yeah, we're going to be doing updates all through tomorrow, all through Saturday, and that sort of thing, mate. So yeah, if you can support us, we'd love you to join us and catch those. And we do a specific update for the Cairns, for the Townsville, for the Mackay area, and talk about the surrounding districts as well, mate. Facebook comments that come up under your mug. How do we or can change the font colour? Oh, okay, yeah, I can look at changing that for you next time, Alan. Yeah, Alan wants me to change the font colour because I think everything's white, and so yeah, you can't see what the comments are here on the bottom left. Yeah, no, that's a good point, Al. I'll have a look at that, mate. how's the wet season going to be? I think we're going to see the wet season settle down, Paul. I think we did an update for the subscribers. So we did an update for the subscribers, and the expectation is that, generally speaking, I think most of the computer models are telling us the back half of this season is going to be a little bit quieter than the front half. And we're going to see a move or a transition to, and we talked about this in the subscription update. Let me think. Yep, no, we did. We talked about it moving into an El Nino phase as we go into next year. So maybe a lot quieter next year compared to the last few years. So that's what we're thinking at the moment, mate, for the rest of the season, Paul. So a little bit quieter. That doesn't, listen, I say a little bit quieter, but remember the cyclone peak is in March. So a little bit quieter from the peak is still pretty significant, right? There's still cyclone signals out there for the next couple of months. Don't get me wrong. We're just not seeing as much going on. Certainly not seeing as much going on into the back end of January into early Feb at this stage. So once again, we're sort of stuck though, because we know that if this cyclone moves west, we maintain some moisture flow into Australia. If this cyclone had come onto the coast and then ducked off the coast out to here, we know that we'd see very, very dry conditions for the next couple of weeks around northern Australia. So the fact that this cyclone moves west and continues to move west means that we maintain the possibility for the monsoon to keep going. We maintain the likelihood that we're going to see some moisture into northern Australia. So already the fact that the cyclone's doing that makes us think that, oh, it might still be a little bit active, right? So yeah. So my thoughts there are generally we should be moving to a more normal part of the season, but normal is still pretty active in a normal season, right? So that's the expectation, mate. So I'm not going to be doom and gloom. I'm not going to tell you there's no rain coming, and I'm not going to tell you there's cyclones everywhere, right? Because none of the data suggests either of those two things. In Tully, look at that rainfall coming. Yeah, there's going to be a lot in Tully. Yes, Tully should see... Tully's just a little bit inland, isn't it? Yeah, right. Let's have a look at Tully. That's a good point. Right. Because of the orientation of Tully, so Tully is on the base of a mountain, right? It's not on the coast. So there's a big difference between Tully and Mission Beach. So a lot of people who think Tully's right on the beach. It's not. And when we take a look at the surface winds, we can see that these southeasterlies are primarily very, very coastal. All right, so when we take a look at our surface winds, we can see here that Mission Beach is certainly very windy, up around 30 to 35 knots, gusting over the course of the next 12 hours, and maybe 35 to 40 knots. But you'll notice Tully, a little bit sheltered there, right? So when Mission's getting 35 knots, Tully's getting, what are they getting, 20 to 25. And you can check these maps if you're a subscriber and you've got the Weather Centre in your plan. You can check these maps for yourself and sort of gauge how deep that southeasterly gets, right? So if you're a couple of streets back from the Mission Beach area, am I getting that, or is that just on the coast, right? So you can see that through the mapping how sort of tight to the coastline it is. But the idea here, Tully being inland, and the fact that you're getting southerlies, probably means you're a little bit more sheltered from the big winds out of this. That changes because Tully's on the base of a mountain. That changes when we get the westerlies, because on the westerlies you might see a bit of downslope acceleration through Tully, right? So there is a chance there that we get some pretty strong winds, and in fact there might be a chance that you get some of your gustiest winds after the cyclone's gone south of you. So for all me gibbering about all the winds to the south, understand that for localised places like Tully, that downslope mountain range or katabatic effect that you're getting could see you get the strongest winds well after the cyclone's gone past you to the south or moved inland, all right? Because it's that westerly flow that comes down the mountain that whacks Tully. It's not going to be the southeaster. The southeaster is going to whack Mission Beach, Curramine, Tully Heads, sure, but not Tully. Yeah. So that's for Nat. Yeah. Oh no, Nat asked said about the rainfall. Way away from all this stuff, so I'm assuming you're just going to get southeasters. I'm not seeing any strong winds for Nambour. Let's have a quick look. I don't want to spend too much time because it's so far away from everything. Right. Nambour. Where is it? Is Nambour up here somewhere? Or, no, it's south of Caloundra, isn't it? Oh, it's in there somewhere. Look, the end result is you're all going to get the same sort of winds, so let's not be trivial about where exactly Nambour is. You can see easterly flow, 15 knots, maybe 20 at times. Nothing there, mate. Even after the cyclones cross the coast, especially after the cyclones cross the coast, nothing there. No, nothing there for Nambour. Right. We've already talked about, Mackay was one of the major areas we talked about, Ren. Leone, best money you can spend for weather updates. Thanks, Leone. And just a reminder, we do have weatheriq.com.au/subscribe. $30 a year. It's not going to break the bank. I hope not anyway. I do understand some people are doing it tough though, and that's why we're out here doing these ones for free. Sorry, Nitso, how's the wind? I set scaffolding up come Monday. Not sure where you are, Steve. Monday. The wind should be done by Monday. The big gales and that sort of thing, they should be finished Monday. You're still going to see some strong onshore flows, but the gales, no matter where you are on the coast, they're done by Monday. Jules, everyone, please subscribe and get these real updates. Thank you from Cairns, as we get so many weather events and appreciate it. Thanks, Jules. Cairns is one of my favourite places to talk about, to be honest, because of the Atherton tablelands, the big mountain ranges, such a beautiful place to visit. So many things to do in and around. You got the reef right there, Green Island. I love Green Island. I love Mossman, Port Douglas, the Daintree, the lush rainforest. Oh, it's just one of the most gorgeous places in Australia, that entire region. You've got the volcanoes, you've got the mountains, you've got the reef. Oh, it's a glorious place in Australia. If people haven't gone to far north Queensland, you don't know what you're missing. Yeah, and so I really, because I love the place so much, I really love doing the forecast for the place so much as well, because it's such a diverse area. Yeah. El Arish is near Tully, Clinton. So whatever we just mentioned about Tully, in that far north Queensland area, it's not going to be much different there for El Arish, mate. Mark, so definitely moving west, not south. No, mate, we expect a southwest motion. So we expect both, right? Oh, you mean after crossing, Mark? So just to be clear, we expect west, south, southwest, all the way to the coast, most likely hitting between Cairns and Townsville, maybe as far south as Ayr, and then west afterwards. So southwest, west, southwest, and west across the state and into the Northern Territory. So if that's what you're asking, yeah, Mark. So we're probably looking at west after it crosses, which is not good news for northwest Queensland, of course, mate. Bonnie, thanks for doing a bit more on Mission Beach. No worries, Bonnie. If the system starts to look like hitting Mission Beach Saturday night, we'll be zooming right in there, right? And having a good look. Patrick, if you haven't talked about it already, mate, how's the towers looking? Yeah, so with the towers, Pat, we talked about it, and we said that there's going to be some heavy rain, but after, Planty asked, Steve Plant asked me, after the cyclone crosses the coast, then it moves inland. That's when we get that beautiful rain in the region. I was going to say beautiful rain, and then I thought, shit, there's so many people that don't want rain right now. But that's where we get that heaps of rain, right? Is that 24-hour period after the system crosses the coast and moves inland. That's the time where Charters Towers needs to be. Getting into it. Zoe, for tomorrow, just isolated showers, mate. Just a couple of showers coming in. Very strong southeasterly winds. Don't get on a boat. That's my advice to you in Ayr. Don't stress too much about the rain in Ayr. That won't set in until Saturday for you, or overnight Friday night at the earliest, more likely Saturday. Dudley, any tornado risks in this Nitso? Oh, that's not something I've even looked at, LK. I genuinely have not looked at that. I can't, off the cuff, I don't want to talk out of turn because I genuinely haven't looked at it, mate. It's a good question, don't get me wrong, because there's obviously tornado threats whenever there's a monsoon low around, and we tend to find that that's going to happen in areas where we're going to get a little bit of cape. So we need to see some available potential energy first. So that's our first chart. Let's have a look. We got some cape as this thing, we're struggling. Oh yeah, we've got a little bit of cape, but not until... Yeah, no, we do have a bit of cape. Probably, if we're going to see some tornadic activity, you would think this area in the Townsville district... Well, once again, though, the problem with this model is it's got the system so bloody far north. Let's have a look at the HAFS model, which is where I think the system's going to cross at the moment, based on the evidence I'm seeing. So if we use the HAFS model, and let's have a look at some of these parameters, eh? We'll use the sweat index, and let's have a look at where we're... So for tonight and tomorrow, those folks in those islands north of Cooktown, yeah, there's some pretty bad shear going on there, eh? There's a southerly and that westerly coming together. There's a really good chance of a little spin up going on out there on those islands, right? So clearly a bit of a tornado risk up there around Lizard Island and those islands that I was asked about just a bit earlier. Yeah, clear and obvious little risk there of something rotating. Obviously, we need to see some cape, though. Do we have cape over the next couple of days? You better believe we do. Look at that. We've got plenty of energy availability there. We've got some nice rotation from the southerlies and westerlies. So for tomorrow, I would suggest that tornadic potential is there for this region up here, offshore primarily, okay? That's what I'd be expecting for tomorrow through that area. Obviously, it wouldn't be the norm, but there is a chance you'd see one in that area. And then as we continue, bring the cyclone southwards, you can see that severe weather threat on the northeast coast. I'm not seeing any evidence of any sharp sort of rotational field there. 950, 850, it's pretty linear. Yeah, I'm not seeing real evidence of anything on the northeast coast, but we drop ourselves down towards Townsville and down towards the Burdick and Bowen Whitsundays. Yeah, I'm seeing something there, right around the Whitsundays. Yeah, definitely. I'm seeing that northerly, east-northeasterly, right around the Whitsundays. That looks quite interesting. At the 700, what's happening at the 950? Oh, yeah, yeah. If you're going to see some, yeah, look at that. If you're going to see some waterspout activity, down here's where you're going to see it. Look at that, beautiful. Do we have any cape, though? Do we have any cape? Yeah, we've got enough. We've got about 500 to 1,000 joules. That's enough in a forced mechanism here where we've got that convergence coming onto the coast. So that Whitsundays coastline and those islands off the Whitsundays, yeah, there's potential rotation in the field there. Yeah, clearly potential rotation along a shear line too, which also adds the chance of tornadic activity in and around that region, right? So the shear line, cape, you know, good turning, strong forcing. Yeah, if I'm looking at anything, I'm looking there. And potentially always when you've got this northerly, northeasterly going through Townsville, there's always a chance there that we might see enough turning. Let's just see if we've got enough cape. Do we have enough energy or is it just all cloud? Yeah, we don't have a lot of energy in Townsville. Certainly not a lot as the system's coming towards the coast. We might increase our energy through this region. Yeah, we do. Once the cyclone comes onto the coast, though, you can see we do introduce a bit of energy for lift into the region. So coming into that area, surface winds are northeasterly, 850s are a bit northeasterly, but they're a little bit stronger. So there's no directional shear there, but there's a bit of speed shear. Maybe a bit of frictional effect, so you could see a little water spout coming onto the coast, sure. But the area that I'd be looking for something half decent would be the Whitsundays, personally. That looked like a very, very interesting area from a lift and turning perspective, right? Because we're forcing the lift with that convergence zone, and then we're turning it through the bottom 3 kilometres of the atmosphere, and certainly through the bottom kilometre and a bit of the atmosphere. We're going from easterlies to northeasterlies and very strong easterlies to northeasterlies. So I like that turning profile, and there is potential there for sure for some water spout activity. All right, mate, that's the first time I've had a look at it, so okay. Is it a cyclone now? I don't think so. No, I'm just calling it a cyclone because it's just easier, because I just know all low pressure systems are cyclones. So I just call it a cyclone. An awesome place to live, says Donna. Hey, Donna, how are you? Good to see you tuning in. I think you meant Cairns, yeah. Someone asking about drives. Don't forget the disaster dashboards. They'll have some cameras of the road system between Cairns and Townsville. So go through all the disaster dashboards, have a look at the highway with all the cameras in the flood spots, and if you see it almost over, you probably need to get a move on, or you need to wait until it goes down again. Okay. All right, I think that's pretty much it. How's Mossman? Yeah, we talked about that area. We talked about that area in the Cairns part of the update. So make sure you check that out, Tori. Andrew Hainitz, I was just driving from Fishery Falls to Babinda and it was raining sideways from the northwest, though. Are you sure? If you're driving from the Fishery Falls to Babinda, wouldn't you be driving into the rain towards the northwest? Wouldn't it make sense that it coming from the northwest because you're driving into that? Yeah, I'm not comprehending. It shouldn't be coming from the northwest, that's for sure. It should be coming from the southeast. But if you're driving, yeah, maybe I've got my things wrong. But you shouldn't be getting rain driving in from the northwest because you're not getting northwesterlies, mate. So yeah, I'm not. Yeah, that one's miffed me. I'm not gonna deal with it. Dimbula is a little bit too far west of the heavy rain through the... we'll go quickly and have a look at that area. So that's just west of Mareeba, isn't it? Dimbula. About 50k west of Mareeba. Yeah, there it is there. All right, so... let's have a look. Dimbula. Yeah, so all the heavy rain that's going to be on the coast, you're not getting any of that in Dimbula. You're getting some light drizzle, all right, maybe. Now, as the cyclone pushes just to your south or just to your east and then southwards, that's your best chance for Dimbula picking up some rain, and that's happening Saturday Ave, Saturday night into Sunday morning. Nothing too heavy, just some showers, maybe a storm coming through, a bit of light rain, and then constant chance of shower and thunderstorm activity through Dimbula for the next few days, maybe even the next week or so, but nothing major in Dimbula expected from the systems rainfall-wise. And if you're taking a look at some of the wind fields for this, I can't imagine there's going to be a heck of a lot going on through Dimbula, being so far inland. But let's have a look. Southeasters, 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 and then the westerly flow. Yeah, you might get more wind out of the westerly flow, to be honest. You might get more wind coming out of the westerly than you get out of the southeaster, by the looks of that. So you might actually get, 15, 20 knots coming out from the west once the cyclone's gone past. But, mate, we're not, yeah, it's not, you're certainly not a sort of focal point of big wind or big rain at this stage. If we do get big wind, it'll be up on the high country of the tablelands, where those wind farms are. And on the westerly flow, we'll get some pretty strong winds on the tablelands on the westerly flow. You might get some strong winds out of that too, but probably looking more the tablelands, mate, rather than Beulah. What about Ravenshoe? Yeah, Ravenshoe, Mount Garnet, that's an interesting little place because with Ravenshoe, more so than Mount Garnet, Ravenshoe being in that high country could see some accelerated wind flow. So see that? Who's asking me this? Yeah, LK, sorry, we'll keep updated. I probably won't be bringing up tornadoes, to be honest, in the subscription video. Maybe for the Whitsundays only. Yeah, tornadoes is not high on my list, mate, when we're talking about this stuff. It's more of an afterthought. Like, that's what I mean. This was the first time I'd even thinking about a tornado. So it's not a real thing that I'm going to be focusing on in any of our subscription videos. I wouldn't imagine, mate. So I probably can't give you any more help in the subscription videos either on that. It's just not a high probability scenario unless you're living on Lizard Island, and maybe I might look at it for the Whitsundays only. All right, I'm not going to look at it for the whole coastline though. That's just a bridge too far, and we got too many other things to worry about. So sorry about that, LK. Just to be clear, I'm not focusing on tornadic development in my subscription videos. All right, as we go through Ravenshoe, going back to our Ravenshoe question, Chantal. We've got southeasterlies, and those southeasterlies are going to be quite strong from probably from this afternoon, evening onwards, and we're going to see them continually potentially driving gusts up around 20 to 30 knots, right? 20 to 30 knots, pretty solid gusts. Nothing that should be damaging, but certainly going to know it. And then the winds will turn westerly from Saturday night, Sunday morning. And those winds could be quite strong as well, coming out at about 25 to 30 knot gusts as well, mate. So fairly strong southeasterlies, fairly strong westerlies. From a rainfall perspective, sure, there's some opportunities for heavy rain. There's opportunities for showers to the east of you, then some opportunities for heavy rain as the cyclone sort of pushes just to your east. So as it comes down the coast, in this period here on Saturday, there's some heavy rain there for Ravenshoe. Mount Garnet too, possibly. And then sort of ducks down to the south. And you can see there that we've got a little bit of light follow-up rain throughout Sunday with the possibility of maybe an isolated storm in there somewhere too. But not a focal point, mate, Ravenshoe. Yeah, we've already talked about the Whitsundays, and we've talked about the entire Mackay Whitsundays region. Hey, Nipper just jumped on. Give me 20 seconds about Townsville. Justin, 20 seconds on Townsville. How do we say it? Nothing to worry about tomorrow. Windy. And Saturday, heavy rain developing, windy. Sunday, heavy rainfall start of the day, windy, but windy coming from the north or northeast. And then settling down for Sunday. All right, folks, that's it. Time to get a big steak in me. And I'll have a chat to you 2 nights' time. Unless you want to be a subscriber, in which case I'll have a chat to you first thing in the morning tomorrow. And to be a subscriber, weatheriq.com.